Northern Coalition. So we are on about time, so let's send it over to the casters for Shadow Cartel versus We Want Your ISK.
Welcome back, I'm Rain, and I'm joined by Sutonia for this match with We Want ISK versus Shadow Cartel. So We Want Your ISK brought a Bargas, double Typhoon, Pontifex, double Blackbird, double Deacon for Frigg Logi, and a Hyena. And boy, are you a Celestis? Because it's making me damp. Sutonia, can you introduce the Shadow Cartel team?
Okay, so Shadow Cartel have bought a drone team. The EOS and Vexa has been banned by We Want Your ISK. So they have bought double Merm, double Stratios, double Healer, double Ishtar, a Vex and Navy issue, and a Stiletto here with bans against Guardian and Nereus.
Yeah, so it looks like Shadow Cartel is doing what we've seen many teams do before, is actually no Logi and I want to say just endless drone spam on their side with that Stiletto for fast tackle, whereas We Want Your ISK has brought a triple battleship core with, I want to say, just tons and tons of control with those Blackbirds and Celestis, as well as Logi with the Deacons, and then the Pontifex for Lynx. Oh, and the Hyenas with the control as well.
Yeah, it might be hard for these drones to hit these Deacons, although the E-War ships on the We Want Your ISK are not going to be too effective against these drone ships. So it'll be interesting to see what the battleships have in their utility highs, the Bargis and the two Typhoons. If they have some smart bombs, the Shadow Cartel might be in trouble.
Yeah, and so the reason the E-War from We Want Your ISK won't have really any help with Shadow Cartel is because, say, the Blackbirds get a jam off with the Celestis stamps and whatnot, Shadow Cartel can just assign drones to another pilot, and if that pilot isn't jammed or damped, then he can actually then control those drones to apply DPS.
Yeah, we're seeing all of those ECMs actually applying to the Stiletto, trying to stop him from maybe tackling the Deacons instead of putting onto the drone ships, which can just assign. Saying that though, the Vex and Navy shield have tested negative, going down into armor. We see damage on Hyena and Bargis, but they're holding for now.
Yeah, so we can see the mass amount of drone swarm from Shadow Cartel on We Want Your ISK, and they immediately go for both the Hyena and the Bargis. And I mean, it looks like We Want Your ISK are just kind of sitting there balled up, except maybe that Hyena. And so they're not really moving much.
Yeah, the Bargis dropping into half armor now, big drone clump on him. The Vex and Navy shield did go down. What's really interesting is I saw a shield effect on the Vex and Navy issue. I'm not sure why they would run rep bots in this comp, so I'm not sure where that came from.
I mean, it could be a emergency backup thing, but yeah, rep bots are only T1 allowed, so a lot of times many teams will prefer to take damage drones over rep drones.
Yeah, so right now the Bargist of Phytosa is catching reps. He did go up a bit. He's still taking some damage, but it looks like he's tanking the drone swarm for now. Meanwhile, the Myrmidon for Janstina Urfadar is now in armor damage. Doesn't look like he's taking too much more though.
Yeah, we can see those, the E-War effects, while the control bar for We Want Your ISK is only half full. It looks like they have spread it across the Shadow Cartel team. I'm not quite sure what difference it's making, because we do still see, like, this Deacon from Ursa dropping pretty quickly. He's not caught reps from his Flow Deacon by O to Horum, and he is actually down. That is a huge hit for We Want Your ISK. Frigate Logi is usually good when you have two of them, but solo it's very difficult for those frigates to be effective.
Yeah, now this remaining Deacon won't be getting any armor reps unless the Bargis and Typhoons have bots for him. So he's probably going to go down here, and then I think Shadow Cartel should start trading more effectively. We're seeing damage on Ishtar now. I believe the Bargis and Typhoons are rapid heavy. That's why we saw them put a Myrmidon into shields and then just stop doing damage to it. Shadow Cartel are also positioning very well in this match. They're all spread out. It's going to be hard for the We Want Your ISK team to chase them down if that's what they're going to do. Although with the rapid heavy range on those Bargis and Typhoons, they probably can hit most of them in the arena. They are kind of in a ball.
Yeah, We Want Your ISK, actually, those battleships are sitting pretty easy. It doesn't look like they're moving about too much, trying to chase anything. I believe at best the Pontifex Celestis are moving about most rapidly, as well as potentially that Hyena. Obviously, a Hyena can just sit and orbit pretty much anyone in the arena and be able to be effective for the most part.
Yep, the Hyena of Tabaru going down pretty soon. That's going to hurt their webs holding down these kiting drone ships. We've seen Newts and Target Pinto onto the strategies of big thump. He is going down slowly, but I think the Bargis and Typhoons are going to be going into reload soon, and that Bargis, the Phytosa, is going really low.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure actually. So I actually took a look at this hyena. He's actually just orbiting his battleship core, and while he does have armor bots, heavy armor bots on him, I don't think it's too effective because obviously, if like for the We Want Your IS side, if Shadow Cartel is just killing one ship to one ship instead of having those drones having to move across the field to kill someone else, they can just obviously just move like a couple kilometers and then they're already on top of their next target. So their Bargus actually went down, leaving only those two Typhoons for their damage core.
Yeah, and if you look at that, the attack bar of We Want Your ISK right now, it is tiny. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to even kill the Stratios before the second Typhoon goes down. They have so much invested in these Blackbirds and Hyena and Celestis, and they're just not doing anything for them against this drone comp. Maybe they thought with the Yus and Vexa bans that they banned it out, but it looks like Shadow Cartel got around the bans with Stratuses and Myrmidons and are taking We Want Your ISK's ISK.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, we went your ISK. Well, I mean, I want to say like their comp isn't. Don't want to say it's the greatest, but also their piloting, their execution isn't too well. Having these E-war ships against drone comps doesn't really turn out too well. But it's not saying that people who bring an E-war core, or E-war support, can't win against a drone comp. They just didn't make the most use of it. Whereas Shadow Cartel is being very effective in the way they're fighting against We Want Your ISK, spreading out, picking people off. Especially primarying those two deacons was very crucial to having them win.
Yeah, a lot of the Shadow Cartel team just sitting on beacons, ready to MJD away. They only have a Typhoon for DPS now that attack bar is tiny. I don't think We Want Your is going to be able to kill anything else here. I think the Blackbirds and Celestis probably just have red bots, so they don't have any damage on their ships. And it's just going to be, E-War versus 9 drone ships.
Yeah, and speaking of rep bots, so that hyena still had rep drones on him, and it didn't look like any of the We Want Your IS tried to change those rep drones. The hyena's passively regenning shield, but I was gonna say like there was no movement of the rep bots. So obviously bringing rep bots may or may not be useful, but you actually want to be able to utilize them, and having them rep somebody who's at full health already is pretty pointless. Typhoon is dropping it rather quickly now that he's in structure.
Yeah, we were on your ISK really slow with those reps. We didn't see any rep any of the deacons that died, and so they didn't put armor bots on them, and the second deacon didn't rep the primary deacon that died.
Yeah, that's crucial. Those deacon pilots or Logi pilots in general have to be very communicative in what is going on, being primary, needing reps, especially armor reps, because armor reps return health at the end of the cycle rather than the beginning, like shield reps. So now we see the Blackbird being primary. Obviously, you want to get ECM off the field because everyone knows how frustrating that can be.
Yeah, I mean, it's always so satisfying when you just see a Blackbird get deleted. Oh, it just gets me so moist.
Jesus Christ. So now the Pontifex down, meaning that the We Want Your IS team is no longer has links, as well as I'm assuming it probably had some tackle on it. Second Blackbird down, and now it's just the Celestis.
I mean, they left the Celestis alive last for you.
Yeah, it makes me so damp just watching it fly around this field.
He's making it's making the Shadow Cartel team really damp, but I don't think that's going to prevent them from killing him.
Yeah, they finally got tackle on him, and he is gone. So with that, we'll send it back to Epiphany in the studio.
Bye, Steve.
Bye, Steve.
Steve.
We are back here with the man who wants to be C3PO, Nikal, and we are joined by Alexei Askan, our man in the corridor upstairs, who has been doing our stats for the day. It is you who's responsible for screwing me up on all these graphs, telling me they're ready when they're not ready. So, sir, after the broadcast, I will have a bone to pick with you. We need to start that. But seriously, though, how has the stats been going? How has the news upstairs been coming through?
It's been going absolutely brilliantly this weekend. It's been so much easier than last weekend because last weekend we were very much struggling trying to track 2 arenas playing simultaneous matches. This weekend it's been so much easier with just 1 arena to track. Also, some of the flagships have gone out, and that's one of the hardest things to track because we've got to be very careful when we're spotting them. 1 arena, so much easier to track all the primaries, all the boundary violations. We've had a lot more of those this weekend, of course. Mm-hmm. And all the things that we're having to track live, which are a bit more difficult. We get a lot of data, though, from Birkov's tool. So we have to give a big shout out to Birkov because he's built a brilliant API tool that's made tracking the stats so much easier this weekend and previous weekend.
What is your setup up there? Like, what are you doing? How do you get from a ton of matches happening to cool graphs on this screen? Like, what's that process?
Well, at the moment we've got at least 2 different screens showing the different matches, mainly tracking fancy and local. Then we've got 2 separate computers open which are tracking my stats sheets, which have been, well, this is the 2nd iteration of them. They've been about a month in the making. We're running to about 150 sheets overall, and we're going to be running about 400,000 cells of data by the end. Through that, through tags, through queries, we then eventually get the more palatable data coming out of it, which is what we pass through to a tool that Vitor has wonderfully built for us, which is making the graphs that we put out for you.
We actually have one ready to go now. We have the ISK destroyed from the first weekend. So this doesn't include today. This is part of your big stats release that you did just a few days ago, I believe. When did that come out?
It went live this morning.
Oh, it went live this morning.
I was awake all through the night trying to get this finished before it was redundant.
More than half of the ISK destroyed thus far is just in that Rabisu lost mail from Waffles in the first weekend. After that, we've got flagships there. We have a Vexor, I'm assuming for scale.
That's actually a very special Vexor. It cost around 5 billion ISK.
What made the Vexor worth 5 billion ISK?
It had looted one of the flagships.
Okay. So we have our flagship looting Vexor for scale as a banana would be used on Imgur, and then we have everything else. So definitely here, obviously, kind of just showing how ridiculously expensive these prize ships are, especially the very strong ones such as the Atana and the Rabisu, easily pushing 200 bill just to buy the hulls. Obviously you can only T2 fit them because this is Alliance tournament rules, but they're just so incredibly expensive. Now the next match coming up, the match before the break for today, we're already nearly halfway through, I cannot believe it. We have Asteria Concord going up against Project Mayhem. Now Asteria Concord are a PFR break-off group. I think they've got just 1 or 2 members from their old AT team. They've done okay so far. They've lost to Fraternity, which is, fair enough. They're a pretty strong team, as we saw just a few matches ago. And they've beaten Rejection of Sovereignty, which I'm fairly sure a wet paper bag could beat Rejection of Sovereignty. I mean, I love you, Kyle, but let's be honest. Then going up against Project Mayhem. So Project Mayhem are a predominantly Russian group. They hang around with Snuffbox a lot in northern Losec, but also have their own things going on, like they like hunting supers and all that good stuff. They beat Dreamfleet, but then lost to their best buds in Snuffed Out, which was a pretty cool match as storylines go. So Jintan, what are your thoughts about the match coming up, Asteria Concord versus Project Mayhem?
Yeah, I think Project Mayhem is going to take this, well, not fairly easily. I think it's still going to be a struggle. Asteria Concord haven't looked overly bad. They definitely have at least some grasp on the meta. But as we saw with their match in Snuffbox, they're willing to bring comps and fight pretty much to the last man. And it should be noted that neither of these 2 teams have a flagship, as Project Mayhem's was thoroughly destroyed in their match against Snuff, I believe, and Asteria Concord failed to pick one for the tournament.
Nico, what are your thoughts on Asteria Concord versus Project Mayhem?
I'm going to have to agree with Jintan here. I think Project Mayhem is the stronger of the teams, but there's going to be a lot of people out there rooting for the underdog, and I think that, you know, in these sort of situations, that's a chance for them to make their name by beating Project Mayhem. So I'll be very excited to see if they can do that and what the public opinion is, how the vote's going right now.
Yeah, that'll be really good. Do remember to vote on vote.eve-nt.uk for a chance to win $1 billion ISK on each match. For if you pick correctly, you have the opportunity, excuse me, to win a match there. So I have some results here. The winner of the Off Sound Mind versus Thermodynamics match I mentioned before was Arfi. The winner for the Hull Control versus Fraternity match, that was Nihalaus Vaus. Nihalaus Vaus? I think that's, my apologies for butchering your name. And then We Want Your ISK versus Chateau Cartel was Pretty Zinta. So congratulations to you guys. You each get $1 billion ISK direct to your wallet, courtesy of EVNT. Thank you for taking part, watching the show, and getting involved in the voting. Now, we hopefully have the bans coming through for the match here, so we can discuss those a little bit. They have disappeared from my thing because people are being a pain, but here we go. So, Asteria have banned the Basilisk and the Ishtar. Project Mayhem have banned the Blackbird and the Kitsune. So, Project Mayhem do not want to see jams. They're terrified of jams. They do not want to see jams in any shape or form, banning probably the two strongest ECM bonus ships that we've seen so far. They are commonly used in the tournament. And then kind of more interesting bans here from Asteria, Basilisk and Ishtar. Now, Jintan, what do you think a Basilisk and Ishtar ban says other than we don't know what to ban, so we'll just ban two ships? Do you think there's any rhyme or reason behind Basilisk Ishtar?
Well, banning the Basilisk is a very interesting play, especially given the rules changes that we've seen this year. You'll note that we actually have reallowed energy transfers. And that means that big ships like Navy Scorpions can feed cap to smaller but also more cap usage heavy ships like the Basilisk. I think that might be a attempt to take the double Navy Scorpion sort of pseudo-tinker that we've seen being used by other teams previously, which attempts to kind of perma-tank enemy DPS. And then the Ishtar itself just seems like a power ban to me. The Ishtar has been powerful in both armor and shield kind of drone shotgun comps, although I know you don't like me using the word shotgun to describe them.
When used incorrectly, yes, I do dislike it. So, Nicole, so Blackbird, Kitsune ban here is coming out of Project Mayhem. Do you think that they just generally don't like playing ECM, they're just not comfortable with it? Or do you think this plays into a certain comp? Are you expecting to see anything coming out of Project Mayhem based on ECM comps? So for example, we know Marauders are very, very weak to ECM despite being T2 battleships. I'm not saying that they're going to bring in a Mortar comp, that's just an example of ships that are weak to ECM. Do these bands say anything to you about what they want to bring or what they're trying to bring? Or does it just mean that they hate fighting ECM?
Probably a little bit of both. I mean, you ask most EVE players out there, I think a lot of them, I'd wager over 75% would come back of a variation of I do not like ECM, although in worse terms. But it may be that they're looking to bring, higher point ships, put more of their points into bigger battle cruisers and battleships, and because they're doing that, they don't want those, their hard hitters to be jammed out because there'll only be 1 or 3 of them on the field. Only a small number of them. Whereas if you're fielding lots of small ships, ECM may not be that important to you. So I think they're going to be bringing more battle cruisers, more battleship type hulls. But again, it could just be the fact that they hate ECM. I'm fully willing to admit they could have done it just for that reason.
And just to clarify to the people who are currently tweeting the hashtag ATXV with their predictions, that is not the way to do it. You will not win $1 billion ISK by predicting to that hashtag. If you want to predict the games, you should go to vote.eve-nt.uk. That is vote.eve-nt.uk to place your bets, to vote rather on who you think is going to win the match. And if you have any questions you want to ask to the panel or myself as we go throughout the day, we'll have a revolving door of guests. We currently have Alexia Statsman, for example. That is where you should use the hashtag ATXV for questions and comments to our panel going on. There have so far been just some fantastic comments and puns going on, especially with Jintan wearing, I think, my grandparents' wallpaper in, so puns and jokes are also more than welcome. So finally then, going on to this match, I think we're all kind of feeling a Project Mayhem probably going to win this, but we certainly can't Asteria Concord. So let's hand it over to the casters for our final match before the break. It is Asteria Concord versus Project Mayhem.